On the 8th of April, 1630, the flagship Arbella set sail from England with 10 other ships destined for Massachusetts. On board was John Winthrop. In 1629, he had been elected governor of the colonists of Massachusetts Bay. As the Arbella journeyed to the New World, Winthrop wrote and delivered a sermon to his fellow Puritan travelers. He envisioned their new home in biblical terms, a promised land, and the inhabitants a chosen people. "We shall be as a city upon a hill," he proclaimed. "The eyes of all people are upon us." If true to God, he declared, even 10 of the settlers could defeat 10,000 of their enemies. If they failed to be true, however, he warned that prayers would turn to curses, the city would be lost, and their story, a passing byword. Winthrop had set the stage in starkly contrasting terms, as black and white as his Puritan suit of clothes. In June of 1630, the Arbella landed in the New World. The Puritans' arrival was the dawn of a great experiment in social order. Alexis de Tocqueville, the great French observer of American society, wrote that the Puritans' devotion to God's laws brought them to liberty. They were, in other words, early Christian practitioners of American democracy. That they landed at Salem was perhaps a harbinger of the pitfalls built into the Puritan version of church-state relations. About 700 colonists arrived in Massachusetts, 7 times the number of pilgrims who landed at Plymouth a decade earlier. 4 more colonies soon developed, all of which were dominated by Puritans. First, Massachusetts, which absorbed the original colony at Plymouth, developed around the Massachusetts Bay. In 1636, Thomas Hooker founded Connecticut, along the Connecticut River. 2 years later came New Haven. The Reverend John Davenport and Governor Theophilus Eden situated the colony along the New Haven harbor on the north end of the Long Island Sound. That same year, 1638, Roger Williams was banished from Boston for his zealous positions. Among the most controversial, he insisted that the Puritans had no right to take land from the natives. Nor, he insisted, ought non-believers in the colony be forced to attend church. Following his expulsion, Williams traveled north. There he sought a deed for a settlement from the Narragansett people. They said yes, and he called the settlement Providence. In 1643, Williams obtained a patent from England for a new colony. The colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations thus became the 5th Puritan colony in America. Anne Hutchinson, who preached from meetings held in her Boston home, was also banished from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. She was openly critical of Puritan pastors and claimed that she was under no obligation to follow their authority. In 1638, Hutchinson moved to Providence, then later settled in the Dutch colony, New Netherlands. By then a widow, she and all but one of her children, a daughter, were killed in a Sewanee tribal massacre near Split Rock, in what we know today as the Bronx. Her daughter was taken captive. Religious experience was the center of Puritan social order. To be a member of a congregation, one had to not only confess belief, but also profess a personal experience of God's divine grace. On the basis of faith and experience, each Puritan made a covenant to abide by the authority of the church and to serve society according to the laws of God. Puritan public law followed Puritan religious conviction. Law could be constraining, as this one, prohibiting the celebration of Christmas. Even so, Puritan social order was at times remarkably democratic. Covenanted men elected the colonial governors and members of the Legislative Assembly. The Puritans' New England Primer was highly successful in fostering literacy among school children, boys and girls. If parents could not homeschool their own children, there were dame schools, small private schools run by women from their homes. Founded in 1635, the Boston Latin School, largely the brainchild of Puritan pastor John Cotton, was the first public school established in America. Of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, 5 were pupils at the Boston Latin School, including John Hancock and Benjamin Franklin. In 1636, the Massachusetts legislature voted to found Harvard, America's first college. 8 of the Declaration's signers graduated from Harvard. Among them were cousins John and Samuel Adams. In 1647, the Puritans in the Massachusetts colony passed a law mandating the establishment of schoolmasters and grammar schools. The law was called the Old Deluder Satan Act. Bible literacy, they believed, would arm young people against the devil's schemes. It was the first major step toward universal compulsory education in America. In 1663, King Charles II granted a new charter for the colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations. The charter provided for freedom of religion, including freedom from punishment by the state for practicing religion according to one's conscience. In the 1670s, thousands of colonists died in the King Philip's War, fought against 2 native tribes, the Wampanoag and Narragansett. King Philip was the English name adopted by Chief Metacomet of the Wampanoag. In 1686, concerned by their independence from the Crown, James II placed the Puritan colonies under the administrative union called the Dominion of New England, along with New York and New Jersey. As a result, the English monarch, not the Puritan voters, assumed control over appointing the governor of each colony. Property ownership, not covenantal relations in the church, became the new criterion for who had the right to vote for representatives to the legislative assembly. Leaders of the Puritan congregations grew alarmed by the unraveling of their social order. Nowhere was this more evident than in Salem. After idolatry, witchcraft was the second sin made illegal in the Massachusetts Colonial Code. 19 Puritans were tried, convicted, and hanged for witchcraft. For his refusal to be tried, Giles Corey was pressed with stones until he died. He was 81 years old. One of the judges in the trials, Samuel Sewall, would publicly repent of his role. In 1700, he published The Selling of Joseph, the first anti-slavery text in America. But the stain on Salem's reputation is permanent. Concerning Puritans, the Salem Witch Trials commonly stand out in the popular American imagination. The most enduring legacies, however, are the Puritans' contributions to American self-government, universal education, religious freedom, and the pioneering spirit required of a new life in a new world facing new challenges. Then there is the Puritan vision. We began this episode with John Winthrop's 1630 sermon. We end it with 2 scenes from 1961 and 1989. As John F. Kennedy began his presidency, he invoked the image of a city upon a hill.
Today, the eyes of all people are truly upon us, and our governments, in every branch, at every level, national, state, and local, must be as a city upon a hill.
Years later, as part of his farewell address, Ronald Reagan once again invoked the city that Winthrop imagined.
I've spoken of the shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I ever quite communicated what I saw when I said it. But in my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace.